All right, welcome back from the coffee break. I want to start off by saying that I think we're keeping with the Halloween theme, and I have to break it to Michael that we got the really scary topic. I mean, which is scarier, spoofing or cannibalization? I think we win that one. Or the opposite thereof. We're going to talk about incrementality today. And I want to sort of piggyback off of what Dina said. Us marketers, we often have a chip on our shoulders. And that's because we go home for the holidays and we have to explain to all of our families every single time what it is that we do. And only to come back to the office and then we have to explain to everybody else in the office, what is it that marketing does and what is it that your budget does? And so our topic today is talking about incrementality and demonstrating that those budgets that we have are actually contributing above and beyond and we're not buying the same users. So with that, I want to let my supremely talented panel introduce themselves and the products that they're working on.
I guess I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Winnie, and I am the Director of UA at Jam City. Jam City is a leading mobile entertainment company with a portfolio of #1 apps, such as Cookie Jam, Panda Pop, and Harry Potter.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I don't think my name is up there, but I'm the Director of Growth at Poshmark. For those who are not familiar with Poshmark, we are a social marketplace for fashion where you can sell, buy, and share your style with each other. And I'm currently leading all the operations and TV initiatives.
Hi, I'm Haley Patoski. I am on the performance marketing team at Pocket Gems. It's a mobile gaming company. Our two main titles right now are Episode and War Dragons.
Hi, my name is Daniel, and I'm here covering today for AYL. We do user acquisition at Yelp, exclusively in the United States.
Great. Let's dive right in. It takes a lot of smart people to make recommendations and shopping and gaming look as easy and as fun as it is. So let's talk about how we test incrementality. Winnie, can you tell us a little bit about how you set up those kinds of tests?
Yeah, and I just want to preface by saying that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all strategy. So I will share some common practices, but keep in mind, I think it's very important to figure out what's the best optimal strategy for your product and definitely communicate this with your team before execution. So a couple of ways that a performance marketing team can execute a incremental lift test is, first and foremost, you can pause all your marketing spend. I know this sounds really scary, but at the end of the day, I think what's important to us is to get a baseline in terms of what our organic installs is or organic revenue volume in terms of whatever baseline metrics we're trying to achieve and gather. Just pause whatever activity, get the baseline, and then slowly introduce each marketing channel and measure the uplift of the value of the KPIs that you're trying to get a read on. Alternatively, you can also do the opposite in terms of trying to scale your marketing spend as much as possible, see if there's actually a ceiling or whatnot for the KPI you're trying to measure. And then, depending on the results, it should, for the most part, be fairly telling in terms of what the incremental lift is. And then last but not least, I think, if you're trying to measure the incremental lift of a certain channel or aspect or a medium, you can just keep that UA spend on with a specific channel or partner, and then slowly measure the uplift or look at the various KPIs you want to look at and see what the impact is to your marketing spend.
Great. So let's dive in and look at a particular channel so that we can get an example of how you would do this, go a little deeper. Michelle, can you give us an example?
Yes, so I can give an example, TV. It's a relatively new channel for us, and it's offline, so it's pretty hard for us to measure. We didn't turn it off. Instead, we decided to blast it. One test that we did was, so again, depends on your business and your appetite for risk. We took 1 week's worth of budget and decided to spend all in one day. While keeping the other channels relatively stable, we didn't increase or decrease other channels. We only scaled up TV. a little bit risky, but we were looking at the blended costs and also like an hourly chart that we have, looking at the week over week just to see if there's any spike. We were able to prove that these TV users are incremental. A little bit expensive, but this basically helped us move forward a lot, and we were able to scale TV spend efficiently, and it's one of our biggest channels right now.
Great, thank you. As we were preparing, we voted Haley's recommendation, our most creative hack towards understanding incrementality. Haley, enlighten our audience.
Yeah, so we actually use incrementality mostly in terms of our remarketing, retargeting, reengagement, whatever you want to call it. And we're actually able to get a little bit more insight because you actually know something about the user. They've already been in your game. You already have behavior and information about them that you wouldn't necessarily have about a new user. So we worked with our data analytics team to try and come up with a model to see like what users were probably likely to come back, who might just be like on vacation for a week and not playing, or maybe they're in another country and can't use their cell phone service, versus people who have truly churned out. And that way we're able to know, like, did we pay for a user that was going to come back anyway, or did we pay for a user that truly wouldn't have come back? So able to measure like which pieces of that revenue was incremental and which pieces were we kind of, what did we double pay for?
We love it. Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about how you're looking across the different channels and where you're treating them differently versus how you're standardizing them?
So first of all, we look at all of our sources and understand them from a philosophy point of view of how unique is a publisher. Let's think Snapchat. And what are the odds that we're hitting a unique user in that publisher? Then we're looking at all the clicks that we're getting in our ecosystem, looking at which apps are competing against each other for attribution before we even consider incrementality. Once we reach a point as an org where we cannot prove through clicks that a source is incremental, then we say, okay, it's time to go and reach out to a vendor to do an incrementality test. And then we take it backwards. We go first to the impression, how unique are they, through the DMA, through the device ID, through the source, through the publisher, ad size, all the way down to where we can stop, give this data to our BI team, and get a very clean read, 2 reads, one from the vendor and one from our BI team, and then take a decision of, out of 100 installs that this publisher is driving, how many of them are truly incremental?
Wonderful. Michelle, sort of along the same lines, we had talked about looking at your different channels as well as actually looking across the portfolio. What's your philosophy on that?
So I think it depends on your business model. If you're a startup starting out, if you want an incrementality test, you can run one with Facebook. For us, we're leaning more towards a portfolio approach when it comes to our online and offline channels. And for the attribution, we have it in-house, so we have full control over it, whether it's last click, multi-click, waterfall. We change it to balance our portfolio while looking at the blended costs and, most importantly, our P&L.
Okay, so we had talked about this to the side. This was a topic that came up earlier today when we're looking at what re-engagement and this kind of incrementality can do to the lifetime value. And so if we're looking at not just the quantity of users, but also the quality of them, Daniel, do you have some suggestions on how we measure that?
So also the approach we have as an org for incrementality is it's a quality badge on the partner. It's something you demonstrate once you scale up after a certain level of spend. And it's there for every buyer that buys through this network to be at ease. Okay, I'm driving the right set of users at the right price. And then after that, we take a look at, what is the actual cost on a user basis, how much every impression is costing us, and then we try to figure out how much value we need to get from them in our app funnel, so to speak.
Okay, and so I think the things that we're talking about here, a lot of us in this room are facing these issues every day. But we talked about at the outset of this, getting buy-in from the rest of the organization. I think another thing that's interesting is that while a lot of us are doing something similar in terms of role, everybody has a slightly different title here, and as a result, probably slightly different stakeholders. So how is this something that you can bring back to the office and explain to the other departments, and who are those other teams that you need to get buy-in from?
I just want to say that, just echoing Dan's note earlier, that first and foremost, each user brings a different value. So first and foremost, whether it's paid, organic, viral, I think there's a certain value to it, right? So then, first and foremost, it's very important for an organization to understand what's the bottom line for each cohort of users. And then second of all, to answer your question, it's very important for performance marketing to educate the rest of the organization, not just, as we work closely, okay, not to make an assumption, but a lot of my peers, I hope, work closely with the product team to keep informed on, the roadmap, upcoming releases or whatnot. But in addition to working with the product team to create a more collaborative effort, I think it's very important to educate, finance, the execs, PR, social, just to come up with a more integrated marketing media plan, and then just understanding the value of each users that we're bringing in, whether it's paid or organic.
And Haley, you had an interesting comment about this, because if we're looking at using spend for re-engagement, how does that change the model that you have around what your costs are?
Yeah, totally. We work pretty closely with the finance team to set our goals. And obviously they have, we have margins that we have to meet. And as Winnie was just saying, like, every user has a different value, and we have to know what the bottom line is for that user. So if you're looking at re-engagement, you've already paid for that user, and you've paid with the expectation that that user will fulfill whatever their lifetime that we've projected out is. But if you then have to go and re-engage them, that means they haven't fulfilled their lifetime, and you now have to pay for them a second time, which for finance is a little bit, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow of, wait, what do you mean you already paid however much you were going to pay for that user? We calculated that into our projections and our financial models and all that stuff, and now you're saying you want to spend more on them? Like, what is that? What do you mean by that? So you have to kind of talk to them about, okay, well, actually you said this user was going to be worth this much, right? But now they're gone forever. So we're not actually getting that final piece of their revenue. So if we can say that final piece of their revenue is worth more than what we would have to spend to bring them back, then we can prove to finance that it's something they should approve our budget for.
And I don't want to go too far into it, but you mentioned to me something, a way of, you're using some of your data from Adjust, but you're also working with finance on this kind of modeling. I mean, is there anything that you can share with the audience about how you came to organize it like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, we use Adjust for to track the reattribution. So Adjust has a toggle, whatever setting that you can set to however many lapse days you want a user to be reattributed for. So like if a user's been lapsed for 7 days, they're eligible to be reattributed, and then you can set your own attribution window for that. So you can actually track all of these users that you're bringing back in Adjust, which then you can track downstream how much they're worth after you bring them back.
Great. So we talked about getting finance on board, getting the business side on board. Daniel, we talked about how incrementality, there's going to be some overlap, and there's going to be some incremental results that you're able to illustrate. At the same time, you're probably going to show some of that overlap as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think that our approach as a UA team has been to double down on the potential the Yelp as an organization may miss if we don't go after the really incremental users and pushing harder for them in the auction. Because once you put an incrementality badge on a partner, you spend the money, the incremental cost of the task. You have to fight really hard for them. It's basically, you have demonstrated, these users are not coming through elsewhere. You need to go to the auction and bid as hard and smart as you can to get them in. And building up on Wen's point, we've built this analogy where we go to the head of product or our C-suite, and we say, if we don't get these users, they're not going to experience the product. You're not going to close the loop on understanding what is the true engagement of unique users with your app. And then the conversation shifts to a completely different level when they understand, like, okay, there is a cost for understanding engagement of real unique users in the mobile ecosystem. And that's where we have been taking this conversation this past year as a team.
Wanted to chime in on
Please.
the, since we've been talking about incrementality and all the tests improving it for like this whole conversation is anytime when you guys run a lift test or incrementality test, you should always look at your marginal cost. And I think that's very important if you're thinking about quality and quantity. Chances are most people are looking at a blended average, and that's not the right way to look at it. When you're running an incremental test, you want to see what is your marginal CAC. If it's very expensive, it might not make sense for your business to scale up that channel. Essentially, you might be accelerating your burn rate without even knowing it.
I'm so impressed with the data-oriented approach to all of this. My last question is, do you ever find yourself thinking, I know this is working, I know this is right for the business, and I can't prove it, or I'm not sure the right way of illustrating the incrementality? Or if you can't, does that mean it's not worth doing? I was the philosophy major, so I just wanted to stump everybody.
Go ahead.
It goes back to your appetite for risk. For my whole team to be aligned, and I spent a lot on TV. And I did a same test on retargeting too. You have to get finance and data on the same page, show them some initial data. We would run an A/B test first, and then justify your spend level. And you really kind of have to use your intuition if you believe TV, because it's offline channel, and most people are like, you can't measure it. So that's one channel that people are not on right now, OTT and TV, and the CPMs are low and there's no competition. Mm-hmm. So if you walk in believing like, okay, this is what I'm gonna get from Facebook, this is what I'm getting from Twitter, how can I get my incremental user? This is like your way out.
I lied, I have one more question. It just makes me think, so at the same time that I think of hockey and the assists, right? I mean, how are you able to accredit? We know that there's the last click, right? But do you have some sense of how the different channels are working together to bring in a user?
Yeah, this is where Adjust comes in, and if you're pulling all the click data, you can see all the clicks that came before the last click for driving an install. That's the first threshold you need to go through when understanding incrementality or understanding reattribution. And then you go towards the impression.
Great. So a lot of what we had talked about and thought through when it comes to incrementality varies by the size of the company. Some of it is a little sensitive too. So we decided as a group, we're actually not going to be doing Q&A, but we're hoping that in the drinks or the activities that happen after, if there's somebody up here that you'd like to know more about, pull them aside, and they're more than happy to share some of those and answer some questions and share some more anecdotes. That's it. Thanks.